After returning from work, I turned on the heating system and started cooking dinner. My stomach was rumbling with uncertainty about whether Olivia would be home in time for dinner. Despite preparing a meal for two, I settled in front of the TV to watch the news and drink half a bottle of wine. Gradually, my concern for Olivia grew. After dozing off during the news and waking up to a game show, I realized I was still alone. Although delays at work weren't uncommon for her, she usually informed me if she was going to arrive after 9 o'clock. By 10 o'clock, I thoroughly searched our house looking for some kind of evidence. Had I accidentally missed a parent-teacher conference or some other extracurricular event? My nerves were on edge. I kept glancing at the driveway, hoping to see her appear. Having waited long enough, I gathered my courage and dialed her work phone, but there was no answer. When I tried her cell phone, it went straight to voicemail. Contacting the police or the hospital seemed like an overreaction, so I convinced myself it wasn't worth driving to her workplace to look for her. It dawned on me that I wouldn't be able to drive anyway because of the alcohol I'd consumed. I tried to calm myself down with conscious effort. I concluded that Olivia was probably delayed at school due to unforeseen circumstances, and most likely her phone battery had died. She would arrive home any minute. Climbing into bed, I closed my eyes, waiting for her return, and eventually fell asleep. The next morning during breakfast, I was deep in thought about the situation. If Olivia had been in an accident, I would have received news by now. Besides, she had her driver's license in her wallet, which reassured me. Still feeling the need to act, I called her workplace and was connected to the principal's secretary. The confirmation that she knew of Ms. Reynolds' existence brought temporary relief. Oddly enough, the secretary didn't know about my wife's whereabouts. She hadn't come to school the day before, and they were just about to contact me about her absence. When I hung up the phone, genuine concern overwhelmed me. Olivia wasn't the type to skip work. So where could she have gone? Having no better ideas, I went to my workplace, but closer to noon, I couldn't suppress the desire to call home, realizing deep down it would be to no avail. The ringing echoed through the empty house. It was time to act. With a trembling heart, I gathered my courage and called the police, informing them that Olivia was missing. Just saying those words sent a shock through my body, making it difficult to remain calm and focused. When I came to my senses, I realized the person on the other end was asking standard questions about missing persons. When was the last time I saw her? Does she have any medical conditions? Have I checked with other family members? Did she take money or cards with her? Did she take anything else? I felt lost, aware of my own incompetence in the situation. The search for a missing adult woman wasn't a police priority, and my ignorance only reinforced their point of view. Nevertheless, they asked me to provide a photo of Olivia, which I assured them I would do. That ended the conversation, leaving me with a feeling of uncertainty. Now that my wife was officially listed as missing in police documents, I found myself alone in this difficult situation. A wave of uncertainty swept over me as I tried to determine my next steps. I decided to leave work early and get the required photo for the police. After lunch, I returned home to find the house still empty. Remembering the checklist the police gave me, I carefully examined the house for missing items. To my surprise, I noticed a pile of empty clothes hangers in the corner of our bedroom, suggesting the absence of an overnight bag. I continued searching, but couldn't find her laptop or phone chargers. With my last bit of strength, I called her phone again, but it went straight to voicemail, increasing my anxiety. I dialed Olivia's parents, desperately hoping they knew something about her whereabouts. To my surprise, her father answered without showing concern or surprise. He claimed he hadn't heard anything from his daughter. As he continued speaking, his tone seemed confused and conciliatory. I felt completely lost and was ready to believe the worst. Feeling helpless, I went to the local police station but found they had no record of my previous call. After a series of repeated questions, they reluctantly accepted the photo I'd brought. At the end of the conversation, I couldn't resist asking, "What should I do now?" The policeman gave me a puzzled look, as if I'd asked how to boil an egg. "Just go home and go about your business," he advised matter-of-factly. "Let us know if she shows up again." In most cases, they do. There was confidence in his words, suggesting he understood the situation well. I wondered if there were alternatives, but nothing came to mind. I returned home with nothing but my thoughts. Despite my disappointment, I didn't let it cloud my thinking. It didn't take long to make the obvious connections: an absent wife, missing clothes, and an anxious silence. It became clear that Olivia hadn't been in an accident or forcibly abducted. She had disappeared, and there are many reasons why a wife might quietly leave her husband without a trace. Now that the truth was becoming clear, I couldn't help but wonder if I should have foreseen this outcome. Looking back, it seemed inevitable. After 5 years of marriage, we should have known each other well enough, but our lives were consumed by work. Our joint existence had been reduced to surviving weekdays and pampering ourselves on weekends. We became companions doing everyday tasks, eating together, visiting friends and relatives, shopping, home improvement, vacationing, and sleeping. I couldn't detect any signs indicating that Olivia was aiming for something outside our routine. She seemed happy, did the usual things, found joy in her work, and allowed me to take the initiative in solving most issues. She enjoyed shopping and good food, which I was happy to indulge her in. She maintained a good mood and refrained from being controlling. We really treasured our last vacation together in Venice during winter. There wasn't a single instance of absent-mindedness where she might have been secretly dreaming of a lover, or when my introspective nature might have overwhelmed her. We both had our own interests that enriched our lives beyond our shared experiences. In some areas, our interests diverged. I enjoyed sailing and mountaineering, activities that didn't appeal to Olivia, who disliked getting wet and was afraid of heights. On the other hand, she enjoyed visiting country houses, gardens, and museums, which seemed less exciting to me. Despite these differences, we managed to live without unnecessary difficulties, easily adapting to each other's preferences. Neither of us felt slighted or uncomfortable because of our different interests. Moreover, we were both always busy, which made me doubt that Olivia would have found time for an affair. Such a secret relationship would undoubtedly have been accompanied by suspicious phone calls and elaborate excuses to justify sudden absences. Indeed, nowadays love affairs are often conducted through text messages, but I couldn't remember Olivia ever putting a password on her phone or being particularly careful that I couldn't check it. In fact, it was quite the opposite. She often left her phone charging in the kitchen and forgot to take it with her when she left the house. The idea that she had a secret lover seemed difficult to comprehend. Although Olivia was undeniably attractive, she never showed flirtation or coquettishness that might suggest a connection with someone else. In lonely reflection, I concluded that Olivia must have found shelter with one of her colleagues at work. I realized I needed to contact the school again to see if she had returned unnoticed. Maybe she wasn't missing at all, just hiding from me. As a practicing teacher, changing jobs mid-semester would be unacceptable. She would never have given up her career after working so hard to rise to a leadership position. It wasn't in her nature. Within a few days, I found myself barely functioning, consumed with suffering, and unable to continue working until I forced myself to return. Unable to express the confusion that gripped me, I tried my best to dig into routine, behaving as usual, but the reality of the situation wouldn't let go. After a week of struggling with this nightmare, a call from the police shattered my temporary respite. Olivia's car had been found in a parking lot in the city center. Reluctantly, I went to retrieve it, but had to pay a considerable fine. When I grumbled about the expense, the clerk was happy to point out the time and date stamped on the receipt: 7:30 a.m. on the very day Olivia disappeared. This discovery sent shivers down my spine, reinforcing the mystery of her disappearance. Shortly after, the police contacted me again. They had investigated Olivia's bank account and found she had withdrawn a substantial sum, $10,000 in cash, from a bank near the parking lot. Strangely, there had been no transactions on the account since then. The police's line of questioning changed, becoming more focused and strategic. Their determination to find Olivia suddenly became apparent. They asked permission to visit my house in the evening to conduct a search. Before they arrived, I decided to visit Olivia's workplace and talk to the deputy principal in search of reassurance. I asked if they had received any messages from Olivia. The deputy principal assured me they had not heard anything and stressed the magnitude of the situation, emphasizing that it posed a serious problem for them as well. During our conversation, it emerged that Olivia played an important role as head of the business research department. Without her presence, there was no one to lead the department and conduct lessons for a team of inexperienced teachers. I sympathized with their predicament, yet overcome with suffering, I reached a point where I believed it was now someone else's turn to experience fear and uncertainty. I couldn't help but share with the deputy principal that the police were actively looking for Olivia. Hoping to get more information, I asked if he had any additional thoughts. He seemed taken aback by my comment and paused to collect his thoughts before replying. I really don't know where she might be. I sincerely want her to be here. If you find out or discover anything, please let us know. I understood from his words that there might be something else to this situation, but he was determined not to reveal possible secrets. His sincere concern for Olivia and his expression of worry for her well-being resonated with me. We exchanged glances, and at that moment, I couldn't help but realize how far behind I was in understanding the situation. If this man turned out to be my wife's lover, then he had carefully planned this meeting, rehearsing every word. In my difficult and emotional state, what chance did I have to get to the truth? I couldn't shake the feeling that I was behaving inappropriately, that in his eyes I looked like a madman. This made me reconsider the theory that Olivia was seeking solace from an unknown lover. Perhaps he was nothing more than a figment of my frustrated imagination, invented as a mechanism to cope with the crisis. As I considered alternatives, another scenario arose. The possibility that Olivia had experienced a breakdown. Perhaps the pressure of work became too much, and she ran away, feeling awkward and unable to face others. This seemed plausible, but if so, she had done an excellent job of hiding her mental state. In the event of a breakdown, she would most likely turn to someone close for help, like her family. This made me think about the conversation with her father, and I doubted what to believe even more. Against this background of confusion, my thoughts switched to another possibility, the disturbing thought that Olivia might have been abducted. Perhaps she went to the city center before work to pick up a gift for a colleague. Potential scenarios kept unfolding in my head, forcing me to search for answers in the dark. I had an urgent thought. Had the police viewed the CCTV footage? When I walked into the hallway that evening, I had the feeling that Olivia was at home. Being cautious, I headed for the kitchen, taking a quick glance into the living room. Did I catch a faint sound or smell? Maybe she was still here, hiding somewhere? With a rush of adrenaline, I climbed the stairs as if on a mission to scare off a burglar, quickly checking every bedroom. When I returned to the kitchen, I noticed one important detail. The breakfast coffee cup had been moved from the table and was now in the dishwasher. There was a second stained cup next to hers. Without thinking, I took out the cup and carefully sniffed its contents. Then I realized that only Olivia drinks rose tea. This discovery increased my wild suspicions and forced me to look for answers. Driven by an insatiable need to find answers, I searched for a tea bag, rummaging through the trash can and even the compost waste, but I never found it. When I went outside to the trash can, I came across it hidden in a plastic bag, still wet, along with discarded napkins and various garbage. It became clear that Olivia did not want me to find this evidence. But why was her attempt to hide the traces of her visit so haphazard and clumsy? Sitting in the kitchen, anxiety seized me, forcing me to get up and continue searching for additional evidence. I searched every corner, devoting a whole hour to this frantic search, until I found a potential sign, a removed pair of red shoes. This discovery only intensified the intrigue, forcing me to be on edge and desperately look for further explanation for her sudden departure. Studying Olivia's wardrobe, I was convinced that there was one item missing from it, a dress that usually hung at the very bottom. In addition, the summer jacket that used to hang on a hanger with a purple velvet pillow was now noticeably missing, leaving an empty space in the lower closet. This discovery seemed significant enough to report to the police. When I contacted the police after a long silence, I was transferred to a female detective constable. I stammered about the unusual case of Olivia's secret visit. After listening to me carefully, she replied, "Mr. Parker, I would like you to come see me. I think we've made progress in finding your wife, and I want to get this case sorted out." Her request gave me a disturbing thought. Had I become a suspect in their investigation? The assertive detective exuded confidence, which indicated she had her eye on a potential suspect. Keeping calm, I replied, "All right. Should I come in now or tomorrow?" She replied cheerfully, "At 10 o'clock. Ask for Constable Williams." Having noted this information, I tried to arrive at the appointed time, which allowed me to be punctual. Upon arrival, I was escorted to the interrogation room, where I sat alone contemplating the situation, somewhat resembling a closed cell. The door remained ajar, which made me think this would be an interrogation. A moment later, Constable Williams came in and sat across from me with her hands on a file folder. She waited patiently for me to be ready to start talking. "I'm relieved to inform you that your wife has moved on, Mr. Parker," Constable Williams began, confidence evident in her tone. "This confirms she was not injured and allows us to conclude there's no need for a police investigation. You can be sure that your wife's safety is not in danger." She further explained that she had been instructed to examine the evidence and had concluded that no further investigation was required. "According to our findings, your wife waited until you left for work and then left with an overnight bag, obviously wanting to avoid a confrontation." Constable Williams encouraged me to think honestly and search my thoughts to identify the underlying cause of her action, suggesting that perhaps she was afraid of my possible reaction. "Go home and think about what you really want," PC Williams advised with urgency in her tone. "The main thing is that your wife is safe, and this is undoubtedly good news. But you need to think about why she returned home during your absence to collect her belongings, perhaps documents or possessions that matter in her new life." She paused, not giving me a chance to intervene. "Whatever the reason, it's obvious she has decided to start a new life and does not want to see you." I tried to speak, but she gestured for me to hold my thoughts. "That's not all," she continued with a solemn expression. "We have studied her personal email correspondence, and the results may not match your expectations. As difficult as it may be to accept, her email data indicates she deliberately planned to leave the house, and there are no signs of suspicious circumstances in her departure," explained Constable Williams, her voice calm but firm. "Go back to your home and try to find solace and peaceful sleep. You have nothing to worry about regarding her safety, but you have to accept that there have been significant changes in your life." She opened a folder lying on the table and began to look through its contents to refresh her memory. I noticed copies of emails, each with a Hotmail header. It became obvious that before her departure, Olivia had been communicating by email with a man. The correspondence testified to a long-standing friendship. They discussed her plans for departure and arranged a meeting. "I understand this may be shocking, but this does not happen rarely," said Constable Williams with a touch of sympathy. "The most likely explanation is that your wife has decided to leave you for someone else. In most cases, missing people aren't actually missing but are hiding from someone or from everyone who was in their life. It seems that Olivia couldn't bring herself to meet you face to face and chose to run away." When the weight of this revelation fell on me, I apparently looked stunned, lost in my thoughts. Constable Williams was silent, giving me time to collect my thoughts. During this pause, I took the opportunity to review the memories of the last weeks of our life together, desperately looking for at least some missed clue that could shed light on her departure, but my efforts proved fruitless as I failed to discover anything significant. After a moment of understanding, Constable Williams spoke kindly, acknowledging the difficulties I faced during this time. "Go home," she advised in a soft tone. "Treat yourself to watching football and allow yourself a break from everything for a while. Over time, everything will start to seem lighter. Don't forget to be grateful for your health, home, work, and future." Finally finding my voice, I asked the lingering question in search of at least some semblance of clarity. Who is this person she went to meet? It doesn't make sense. They didn't have enough time to get to know each other. Where can they be? Constable Williams's response came from a set of rules. emphasizing the legal perspective of the situation. "There was absolutely no crime," she replied firmly. "Your wife made the decision to leave you on her own. She doesn't want to be found. The police are not interested in the reasons for her departure, and I do not see the need to disclose the identity of the person she met." Constable Williams continued firmly, "As of today, this case is closed. Your wife is no longer considered missing. It's time for you to move on." Her words startled me, leaving me feeling incredulous. If I really wanted to find out her whereabouts, Constable Williams advised me to contact a lawyer. There might be civil obligations, such as legal or financial matters, that require communication between us, even if it takes place through our respective attorneys. When Constable Williams's phone rang again, she quickly got up from her seat, wanting to attend to urgent matters. I stayed where I was, the weight of recent events still weighing on me. Turning her back and talking on the phone, she headed for the door, leaving me to deal with the consequences of her departure. In a fit of curiosity and disbelief, I leaned forward, grabbed the file, and hastily flipped through its contents. Page after page, dozens of short emails with Hotmail headers looked back at me. Among them, I noticed the familiar nickname Dibble, which I affectionately called Olivia. My gaze shifted to the email address of the person with whom she corresponded, JT_Harat. When I read the signature, it dawned on me, Jason Turner. Unable to resist, I lingered on a random sentence in the middle of one message. "There's very little left, and we can be happy." The subtext stunned me, but before I could fully process the information, Constable Williams turned her attention to me again. I quickly straightened up, leaving the folder where it was, not wanting to give away what I'd found. Without further explanation, Constable Williams paused and held out her hand for a farewell handshake, signifying the end of our meeting. "I have other things to do," she said, her tone indicating it was time for me to leave. "Go home. Tomorrow there will be a new way of looking at things." I expressed my gratitude to her and left the room. Walking aimlessly through a busy shopping mall, I watched the people around me. Mothers with strollers, pensioners heading to the library, groups of teenagers enjoying socializing with each other. The world seemed so far away from the enclosed space of work. It had been a long time since I'd been in the city center in the middle of the day. Life had changed dramatically, and I felt helpless when I met the bright daylight. When I finally got home, an idea formed in my mind. A semblance of a plan appeared, giving a glimmer of hope amid the all-consuming turmoil. With renewed determination, I began to vigorously clean up the house, removing all traces of Olivia's belongings. Jason Turner's elusive name popped into my head, evoking a sense of familiarity. While I was working hard, filling garbage bags with the contents of drawers and cabinets, this name continued to pester me, demanding attention. When the bags filled the hallway, I loaded them into the car and drove to the local charity shop. After getting rid of the bags, I stopped and looked at the books on display in the window. It was at this moment, mesmerized by the sight of an old car maintenance manual, that I had a spark of an idea, remembering the familiar name. I decided to scroll through the pages in search of possible clues. As a student, I owned a Mini, not as a nostalgic antique, but as a practical and economical means of transportation. But because of the collapsing body and the ever-leaking engine, I spent a lot of free time trying to keep the car in working order. When I looked at the oil-stained maintenance book, an inexplicable connection with Jason Turner was born in me. This thought haunted me until I reached the garbage dump, where I threw away a huge collection of Olivia's things that turned out to be unfit for sale. When I was unloading the waste into the crusher, I was overtaken by a sudden, painful realization. Puzzled by this disturbing thought, I hurried back home as soon as possible, wanting to deal with the consequences that had come over me. As soon as the computer booted up, I quickly wrote letters to 2 high school acquaintances. After completing this task, I devoted a few more hours to clearing the house of all reminders of Olivia. Exhausted, I eventually succumbed to fatigue and fell asleep in front of the TV. When I woke up, evening had already descended, and the prospect of being alone in the house did not give me peace. In search of company and entertainment, I went to the pub to watch a football match. The next day, I returned to my normal routine and did my job quite successfully. Returning home, I stopped to buy chilled madras curry and naan bread, hungry for comfort and convenience. After enjoying my meal and taking a refreshing shower, I finally opened my mailbox to see if there were any answers to my queries. To my impatience, a single answer came to my initial request. During a thorough search in the boxes stored in the attic, I came across a cherished memory, a souvenir copy of our high school yearbook. Flipping through its pages, I finally found a photo of Jason Turner, who was the captain of the basketball team and senior class president. Inspired with hope, I immediately replied to the letter I received, asking if there was any way to contact Jason. The answer came quickly, although without a definite answer. The sender mentioned that he would forward my requests to other people who might have more detailed information. 2 days later, an unexpected answer came. It was from a person who had recently communicated with Jason at a reunion. According to the message, Jason worked in the marketing department of one of the banks in the city. After making inquiries on the internet, I quickly found out the address of the bank's head office, located in the Moorgate area. A plan quickly formed in my head. Taking the earliest bus, I arrived at the bank building at 7:30 in the morning, fully prepared for the fact that it would take all day to find my target. Although a lot of people were already entering the building, I was sure that I would not miss Jason. The busy bank had one main entrance, and there were many young female employees. Therefore, it was not difficult for me to sit on the opposite side of the road and pace back and forth, carefully examining every man over 35 in search of Jason. Around 8:55, a figure very similar to my target caught my attention. Cautiously crossing the road, I felt confident that I would not be recognized. Jason was engrossed in talking on the phone, avoiding contact with anyone as he made his way to the revolving doors. I resolutely followed but stopped at the security barrier, not wanting to tempt fate. Jason confidently continued on his way. I decided to enter into a conversation with the guard, using him as an opportunity to gather information, but the language barrier interfered with our communication, and we hardly understood each other. As a result, I gave up on communicating, continuing to watch Jason enter the elevator and ascend to the upper floors of the building. Not wanting to take unnecessary risks, I decided to keep a close eye on him. Having examined him well, I was confident I would recognize him when he left. I hid in the nearest Starbucks across the street, fully prepared to devote the whole day to this mission. He might leave at lunchtime and not come back, or he might take advantage of a flexible schedule and leave in the middle of the day to hurry home and cook for Olivia. As time went on, I drank 6 cups of coffee and ate 3 cakes with walnuts and apricots, patiently waiting. Finally, after what seemed like an eternity, Jason hurried out of the bank. I hurried after him, trying to keep up. He purposefully walked to the nearest subway station, and we boarded the Central line heading to East Acton. Jason walked briskly for about 10 minutes, leading me to a modern house located in a residential cul-de-sac. It's noteworthy that he didn't show any sense of confrontation or awareness while I followed him closely until the front door closed. The building consisted of 4 floors with about a dozen apartments. I went up to the top floor and arrived at the same time as Jason when he took out a key and unlocked his door. Filled with anger and despair, I confronted him with fierce determination. "Well, Jason, I'm your worst nightmare," I said, my voice shaking. "Get out. Leave this place. Where is she?" I quickly scanned the surroundings, hoping to catch at least some sign of Olivia's presence, but found nothing. Confused, Jason replied, "Where's who?" I saw Jason trying to get his phone out of his pocket. Acting on impulse, I knocked the device out of his hands and pushed him hard. "Where is she?" I demanded urgently. Jason looked at me in confusion. There was fear in his eyes. "There's no one here," he stammered in a trembling voice. "What are you doing? Get out of my house." At that moment, Jason looked really scared, his curly black hair sticking out like tassels over his ears. Looking around in the hope of finding at least some signs of Olivia's presence, I became more and more worried. Through the half-open door, I saw a bedroom with a double bed, but there was no sign of a woman in it. I was seized with a sudden feeling of fear. I was afraid that I might not achieve what I wanted. When Jason, with obvious fear, began to demand an explanation of my intentions, I tried to dispel his fears. Please don't be afraid, Jason, I said, trying to stay calm. Please just tell me. I begged, desperation sounding in my voice. If you threaten me, I won't hesitate to call the police, Jason retorted. They already know about your existence. Actually, it was the police who brought me to you. I didn't do anything wrong. By the way, you are the main suspect in the disappearance of a woman. Rest assured, they are very interested in you. Calming down for a moment, I continued. I just wanted to talk to you before involving the authorities. Olivia's not here. It was a shock for me to hear him admit that he knew her, although deep down I already knew. You should know where she is. She's never been here. I need you to tell me everything you know. After that, I promise I'll let you go. Understand? I am looking for answers, and I sincerely believe that I have done nothing wrong. Yes, we did agree to meet, Jason admitted, a note of disappointment in his voice. It was purely for old times' sake. We met at a restaurant in Soho and spent a few hours together, talking and sharing a meal. That was all, I assure you. His words weren't enough to satisfy my suspicions. Deep down, I knew there was more to it, and I was determined to get to the truth. Questions and doubts were spinning in my head. Who was this Dibble in question? Was he trying to claim that Olivia had an affair with him before she became my wife? She had never mentioned anyone with that name before, but at the moment, there were too many tangled threads to unravel. Combining uncertainty and determination, I replied, If you're telling the truth, Jason, then I have a lot to process. But I want you to understand that this is a deeply personal matter for me, and I don't expect anything from you except honesty. You were the last person to see Olivia. It's time to start worrying, I argued, my voice filled with concern. She came to you, and no one has seen her since. She disappeared without a trace. Did something happen between you? Did she reject you? Is something wrong? Jason quickly brushed off my insinuations, denying any wrongdoing. No, I would never do anything like that. Please don't be ridiculous, he pleaded. The truth is that she works in Bloomsbury, but I do not know where she's staying. We met several times, but it was at my insistence, I admit. I was hoping that something would resume between us, but it didn't work out. I got the impression that she has the potential for more, but she doesn't really need me. Believe me, she wasn't here. It's true, and I respected her boundaries. I've never been to where she's staying. She refuses to meet me, Jason admitted, disappointment in his voice. She works for a small publishing house called Simple and Stevens or something similar in Gordon Square. Olivia works there as a proofreader. Okay, Jason, I replied, bitterness in my tone. Enjoy your miserable evening. You seem to think that your ordeal is over, but let me remind you that you have no right to behave like this. If Olivia has made the decision to run away from you, then perhaps it's for the best. You are unworthy of her. You have done great harm to her life. You are a disgrace. I couldn't help but laugh at his feeble attempts to justify his actions. Rest assured, Jason, you are not my main enemy in this situation. With these words, I left him standing where he was, realizing that he was not the main object of my anger and determination. Going down the stairs, I noticed that the door to the apartment located on the floor below was ajar. An elderly woman cautiously peeked out of it, seemingly frightened by the commotion. Taking advantage of the opportunity, I could not resist making a remark to her. Your neighbor from above, Mr. Turner, should not have brought such dishonest company to such a respectable place. It's not fair to the other tenants, I said firmly, continuing on my way. Frustration grew in me as I was tormented by conflicting thoughts about Olivia and whether to believe Jason's claims of innocence. He shared as little information as possible, studiously keeping silent about their email correspondence and conversations about escape. Trying to remain objective, I tried to assess the situation clearly and impartially. Doubts clouded my reasoning, making it difficult to identify the truth. The real situation was completely different from the scenarios I had imagined. I was prepared for Olivia and Jason to end up together, looking for at least some relief or satisfaction from confronting them. But regardless of whether there was intimacy between them, the fact remained that they were planning something together. One question remained. What did Jason mean when he said he was the first? Deep down, I felt that Jason was lying, that there was nothing romantic between them. It seemed more likely that they had indeed revived their former friendship. Did I really want to find Olivia in this context? It was hard to accept, but now I realized that Olivia knew Jason before she met me. The details of how it happened no longer mattered. It was important to come to terms with this unexpected truth. It turned out that Jason had managed to restore relations with Olivia and convinced her that she still loved him. Perhaps their relationship had been developing behind the scenes for a long time. It looked like he had managed to convince her to leave me and start a new life with him. Overcome with shame, Olivia decided not to reveal her betrayal, but to run away and start a new life with her high school sweetheart. Focused on deception and betrayal, I unwittingly played my part in this drama, tracking down her lover and wanting revenge. I thus ended the plot development. But what did Olivia really want? Did she want me to find her so that we could participate in the last cathartic scene of conflict and reconciliation? Maybe she was looking for confirmation of her decision to leave me, wanted me to vent my anger and bitterness, and thereby justify her decision? These questions haunted me as I pondered the complexity of our broken relationship and the dramatic circumstances of her departure. It seemed quite possible. After all, hide and seek is a useless game if you don't find the one hiding in the end. That evening, staying at a hotel in Earl's Court, I considered my wishes and decided that I wanted to see her. If there was one more moment in this dramatic saga, it would be the one in which the wife confesses her misdeeds and begs to be taken back. I decided that I should be present at this climax. I contacted my workplace and asked for an extra day off so that by 8 o'clock the next morning, I would be near the publisher's office in Bloomsbury. There was nowhere to hide, and I leaned against the railing on the opposite side of the street and waited patiently. For an hour, I stood on the street, pretending to fiddle with my phone. If someone was watching me, my actions would seem suspicious, but there was no one around. The publishing house's office was located in the basement of a Georgian-style terrace house, which gave the square even more charm. It dawned on me that if Olivia and Jason were dating, he would undoubtedly have warned her about my visit. Most likely, she would not work and would plunge into the endless sea of nameless Londoners again. Apprehension filled my being as I struggled with restless energy. The anticipation of the upcoming meeting kept me in suspense, and I longed to find a way out of my pent-up feelings. If Jason had been around, I would have been happy to take out my anger on him, getting satisfaction from expressing my disappointment. As the minutes passed, a certain realization dawned on me. I was looking forward to the upcoming meeting with Olivia. It was already late, after 10 o'clock in the morning, and I was on the verge of giving up. With a sense of resignation, I turned away from the publisher's office, looking for the nearest way to the metro station. Lost in my thoughts, I stepped aside as she hurried past me, concentrating solely on getting to work. She did not raise her eyes, her head lowered, clutching her bag tightly to her chest, the image of a woman in a hurry. In that fleeting moment, I caught a glimpse of Olivia, a figure absorbed in her trivial affairs. It was only a brief reward for the long hours of waiting. Watching her disappear into the distance, I almost convinced myself that I had achieved what I had come for. I saw my wife, but it brought me neither comfort nor satisfaction. I was at a crossroads, to return home or to accept the fact that I would have to wait a few more hours to reveal the truth. My concern for her had decreased significantly, especially after the pain she caused with her actions. But after thought, I decided to continue. What are a few more hours in the grand scheme of a 5-year marriage that has already been wasted? Determined, I bought a pair of inexpensive binoculars at the nearest camera shop. Armed with this new instrument, I retired to a quiet park nestled in the square, carefully choosing a place from which I could have an unobtrusive but distant view of the door. I prepared for a long observation. Minutes passed, and my vigilance did not weaken. She didn't leave for lunch, and no one seemed to come in or out of the house until 4 o'clock in the afternoon, when a group of people emerged from the building. I noticed Olivia among them. Deciding not to lose sight of her, I ran after them, desperately trying to catch up. She was among them as they headed for Euston Station, and I walked a few steps behind, trying to remain inconspicuous. When we entered the ticket hall, the group dispersed, and Olivia headed up the escalator to the Victoria line. A bizarre turn of events led to a farcical chase unfolding across the busy West End. She walked slowly, and I hurriedly pursued her. Going down the escalator, I found myself pressed against the window of the subway car next to her, carefully watching her empty gaze, not looking at anything in particular. The crowd of people provided enough cover not to be noticed, and she never once looked back in my direction. It became clear that Jason hadn't warned Olivia about my approach. Together with the noisy crowd at Oxford Circus, we made our way through the various departments of the John Lewis store, passing bags, haberdashery, and shoes. Thoughts were spinning in my head about whether she was dating someone else. The bistro cafeteria seemed like the place where, after work, you can treat yourself to ice cream or cake with a friend. I joined the queue for coffee and watched her choose a portion of soup. Reflecting on the assortment of cream cakes, I made my presence invisible and got in line for payment a few places after her. She never looked back, carrying her tray to the bench by the window, seemingly oblivious to my presence. She looked tired, sat motionless, and I stood behind her silently calming myself, watching her butter a bun and stir the soup to cool it. I plucked up the courage and broke the silence. "Hi, Olivia." I greeted her, perhaps in an overly dramatic tone, which scared her and made her accidentally spill some soup. Worried that she would try to escape again, I quickly took a seat next to her, blocking her possible escape route. "Ryan, how did you find me here? Why did you come?" "What is it?" she asked, clearly surprised and alarmed by my unexpected presence. Sensing her growing anxiety, I reassured her. "Don't worry, Olivia. I'm glad to see you, and I just want to bother you for a while." To her question about how I managed to find her, I answered vaguely. "Is it really that important? Let's not dwell on it now. I'm not here to convince you to come back," I replied, my voice flat. "Just drink your coffee." Our eyes met. Curiosity, not familiarity, was read in our looks. I noticed that she had cut her hair a little shorter, which gave her a youthful look. I had always preferred long hair. In addition, she applied makeup emphasizing her lips and eyelids. I was disturbed by the reminder of the bond that once bound us, of the love that we cherished. Emotions betrayed me, making me wonder why I still cared about the woman who left me. Anger was rising in me, but I tried to keep my composure, not to shout, and not to give in to anger. "I want you to know that I'm doing well," I began, feeling the need to convey my strength and determination. "I didn't come here to blame you or call you bad in any way." Olivia nodded, seemingly not surprised by my statement, but said nothing. Taking a deep breath, I continued. "I met Jason." I paused and watched her reaction carefully. Although she didn't say anything, I noticed a flicker of anxiety in her eyes. "I guess I'm looking for what some might call closure, a way to move on with my life. You found yours by leaving and starting over with him, but I didn't know at first. I thought something terrible had happened to you, and it took me a while to figure out the truth." The weight of our common history and the emotions that still did not subside between us hung in the air. It was a moment when honesty and clarity were needed, no matter how painful the truth was. She raised her head and met my gaze with a newfound honesty, as if all the consequences of her actions had just reached her. "It's not your fault," she began, and there was remorse in her voice. "It's my fault. If you've talked to Jason, you know that nothing happened between us. It was a mistake in understanding. But please don't worry, I'm not asking you to take me back. I understand that this is impossible. I have shown myself unworthy of trust and selfish, and I am unworthy of you." At that moment, it became clear that she recognized her shortcomings and the pain she had caused. She had decided to leave, and now she admitted that it was a mistake. An irresistible desire to understand the situation prompted me to ask a question. "But what did you mean? What did I do that made you run away from me?" I asked, confusion and thirst for an answer sounding in my voice. Her answer cut through the air with clarity. "You didn't do anything," she said firmly, not taking her eyes off me. "I thought I had ruined everything, and I came to the conclusion that starting all over again was the only way out," she admitted, and there was regret in her tone. "I was unhappy and felt that I wasn't right for you. Planning a new life with Jason seemed to give me a sense of purpose, a way to give meaning to my existence after I admitted that I was selfish, deceitful, and unfaithful. But it's true, I never wanted to hurt you. Her words hung in the air, bearing the weight of her confession. I was thinking that if I disappeared without saying a word, you wouldn't have to find out about my actions and feel betrayed day after day. You would gradually forget about me and eventually be able to move forward. I understand if this revelation causes you bitterness, but please know that this was never my intention. With a shrug, she expressed a mixture of resignation and remorse, acknowledging the consequences of her choice. It seemed to me that it was almost a suggestion to focus in conversation only on the pain. The weight of her suffering overshadowed mine, and it brought no comfort. When she continued to speak, I was at a loss. I didn't want to hurt her anymore. We were so comfortable together that we hardly talked, she explained, regret in her voice. We worked a lot, but mostly to distract ourselves from the emptiness that permeated other aspects of our lives. Ryan, let's be honest, our marriage is not worth being proud of. These words struck a chord in me, causing a mixture of emotions. I was happy, she said calmly. This statement made me wince, realizing the impact it would have on me. Jason listened to me, and I thought we deserved the opportunity to find out what we could create together. He deserved the time he spent with me. Her words hung in the air, revealing her point of view and the reasons for her actions. It was clear that she believed in the possibility of other happiness and satisfaction, both for herself and for Jason. In life, we meet very few people who become really close friends, and it is very important to cherish these relationships. Why? Why should I ignore the only person who can make me truly happy? I treasured my marriage, there was no doubt about it. I understood that I was acting selfishly, putting my own needs above everything else. But why should I go through life with a nagging sense of missed opportunities? It was a difficult choice, but I felt I had to make it. Yes, I left you believing that I would start a new life with Jason. I was too ashamed to tell you what I was doing, so I chose to leave when you weren't home. Deep down, I was aware of all the wrongness of my actions, but I still continued to live on. But I soon realized that it was a mistake. As soon as I met Jason, I realized that I had confused my dreams with reality. I let my fantasies cloud my mind and guide my choices. Jason was just a catalyst for the fantasies that lived in my imagination. Please, don't humiliate me by calling me stupid or naive. When Olivia stared at me, I tried my best to keep a stoic expression on my face. In fact, I felt numb, feeling a kind of relief from being in her presence and getting answers to my questions, but I couldn't understand how we could pick up the pieces of our broken lives and try to restore them. Curiosity got the better of me, and I asked, "Do you have a good place where you live now?" Olivia laughed, and the sound filled the space between us. "This is London," she replied with a touch of irony. "Only bankers live well here. What I have can be compared to a room in a student dormitory, but that's okay. I feel young. I will explore the possibility of getting a teaching job for the next semester," I said, reflecting on the potential financial stability that this could provide. London needs experienced teachers, and immersion in work seems to me the best option, but I need a recommendation from your old school. Could they provide it? Olivia considered my request, and a contradiction flashed through her thoughts. I can get a doctor's certificate that I had a breakdown. After all, isn't that how it was? She suggested with a note of uncertainty in her voice. Taking a deep breath, I tried to orient myself in a difficult situation. "Olivia, I honestly don't know what's best for us at the moment," I confessed, feeling the full weight of our uncertain future. "If I'm going to live as a bachelor, then I would prefer to have an apartment in the very center of the city, even if it means losing the sense of community that we once had. We have a difficult decision to make. Perhaps selling the house will provide us both with financial stability." The seriousness of these decisions hung in the air as we pondered the consequences of starting a new life and finding our individual paths. "Given that you can afford a place to live in London, I understand your concern," I replied, acknowledging the financial difficulties we faced. "But let's not make these decisions individually or based only on our own desires. We have come this way together, and it is very important that we continue to make decisions together when they concern both of us. After that, you can do what you think is best for you." Olivia seemed startled by this attitude, perceiving it as a possible evasion or betrayal, but I quickly clarified my intentions. "No, this is not an escape or a betrayal," I sincerely assured her. "You and I have come the same way, and it would be fair if we make these decisions together, taking into account each other's needs and views. I want us to do what really meets our interests." Adhering to a pragmatic approach, I added, "In my opinion, the sale of the house should be the starting point. Money inevitably influences decision-making, and you especially need financial stability right now." The road ahead seemed uncertain, but we had to make practical decisions and choices that would allow us to move forward with a sense of confidence and well-being. "Yes, you're right," she acknowledged. "I appreciate your understanding of our situation. It looks like we don't need our marital home anymore." My nod confirmed this fact. As Olivia talked, we both became aware of the lack of connection and the tension that persisted between us. It was painful for me to admit that I could not be myself in communication with her. She took a pause to reflect on this reality, and her thoughts were reflected on her face. "I won't pretend anymore," she said honestly. "Perhaps this version of me, this evolving personality, is the real me. This is the person I'm becoming, and this new person needs a new start, a new life." We faced the truth by admitting that our marriage was a mistake. Although I held a grudge against her for the pain she had caused, I didn't want to continue to ruin her life or mine. I realized that it was time to end the losses and move on. "I'm mad at you for the huge pain you caused me," I said, exposing my emotions. "But I don't want to cloud the rest of your life with bitterness. Let's admit our mistake in marriage and give each other the opportunity to find happiness on our own. If you stopped loving me and wanted to move on, you would have to express it," I said with a mixture of resignation and disappointment. "The fact that you disappeared without saying a word is incredibly alarming. It doesn't matter if you have a relationship with Jason or not. The fact remains that you rejected me. You left in search of someone who you thought was better. I believed I made you happy, but now it seems like we just weren't right for each other. It's useless to continue being unhappy together." But as soon as I said these words, a feeling of uncertainty crept into my soul. Life turned out to be more complicated than I thought before. I couldn't be sure that she had found the right man, and I didn't want to wait for her to decide. I decided to move forward without dwelling on what I considered a failure. I did not hate her, but I could not cause myself any concern or worry. Our relationship turned into a state of indifference, which indicated that we needed to go our separate ways and seek our happiness. This, apparently, is the irony of fate. We form bonds and couples more by circumstances and intimacy than by anything else, I replied, acknowledging the complexity of human relationships in marriage. In theory, the spouse should be the only one. There should be no place for experimentation and wandering. I care about you, but I thought that running away would cause you the least pain. It meant that you wouldn't know that I was looking for solace in another man. At least, that's what I thought at the time. Olivia's remorse was palpable as she continued to explain her arguments. "I'm sorry, but at that moment, it seemed to me that it was the right thing to do. When I found out that you had gone to your high school sweetheart, I couldn't understand how you found the time for a secret life. We were both absorbed in our own affairs. We stood face to face, facing the undeniable truths that defined our broken relationship. Pain and regret were in the air, testifying to the profound impact our choices had on the lives of both. I took a deep breath, gathering the courage to ask the question that had been bothering me for so long. "Olivia, please enlighten me about Jason. Was he your first boyfriend? And why didn't you ever tell me about him?" There was curiosity and apprehension in my voice. Olivia shook her head at first, and then, after a moment's thought, nodded. "Yes, he was my first," she admitted with a note of nostalgia in her voice. "We were together in high school, long before I met you. I never told you about him because, at the time we met, when I was in college, Jason seemed like an ancient story to me, completely unrelated to our relationship. Besides, I was insecure and naive. I didn't think it was necessary to tell my boyfriend about past relationships. Jason was confident and well-connected, while I was still figuring myself out. Yes, I was strongly attracted to him then. As the years passed, it might have seemed at the time that we had nothing in common. In fact, he was always concerned about building his career in the corporation, while I was focused on my work, she said. At that time, I didn't consider a relationship serious, but when he reached out to me after so many years, I realized that I still had feelings that I had kept to myself for so long. Then she talked about the innocent nature of their correspondence, stressing that she had not originally planned to start an affair. It wasn't like I was intentionally looking for an affair, she clarified. He was just a friend, someone I could confide in during a difficult period. The work became hard, and I had no one else to turn to. But I didn't dare to burden you with my problems. I was afraid that it would destroy our relationship. Olivia had a feeling of inner conflict in the process of revelation. Yes, the threads of deception began to take hold of me, she solemnly confessed. I convinced myself that creating a distance between us would protect our emotional well-being. I thought that by allocating a separate space in my life, I would be able to maintain my friendship with Jason without compromising our relationship. She stressed that their relationship had never been exclusively about intimacy, but rather about the problem of maintaining a platonic friendship between a man and a woman. It wasn't about satisfying intimate desires, but about how a woman can maintain a sincere friendship with a man without the ghost of intimacy creeping into the equation, she mused. Jason genuinely cared about me. He would come home from work and send me a letter because he was genuinely interested in how I was doing. And in the end, how could I refuse him if he wanted it? Olivia confessed the bitter truth. Yes, I left you to be with a man who I believed would take care of me for the rest of my days, she concluded, her voice heavy with regret and longing. I believed that by separating from you, we would find happiness and understanding. Olivia's suggestion to go out for a drink took me by surprise. She expressed a desire to communicate, in part as friends, if this was really the end. But emotions got the better of me, and I couldn't accept her invitation. Sorry, Olivia, I replied, straining my voice. I'll just drown from drinking. The pain you caused is too deep. It's not just a scar. It's an indelible wound that I can't forgive. The realization of the depth of my resentment and betrayal did not allow me to find solace or friendship at this moment. The pain remained too deep for reconciliation or even a heartfelt parting. It's not just a scar, it's a deep wound, I admitted, realizing the profound impact our relationship had on both of us. These words hung in the air, reminding us of the difficult emotions we faced. Olivia's face tightened, her expression became weary, and she prepared for further conversation. It became clear that the connection that had once been between us as friends was interrupted, replaced by an unspoken tension and distance. We could no longer relax and take part in that easy camaraderie that was once friendship. Feeling remorse, I plucked up the courage and expressed my regrets. I'm sorry, Olivia, I said, and there was genuine sincerity in my voice. She flinched but quickly answered just as nonchalantly, and you. We stood there, acknowledging the end of our conversation and saying goodbye to each other with these parting words. We went on, each in our own way, entering into our individual battle with the world. In the next 3 days, I found solace in alcohol, but then I realized that this was not an option and contacted a lawyer to start the divorce process. Every day, I hated Olivia more and more. I couldn't understand how she could betray me so easily. Had she never loved me? 3 months later, we were officially divorced, but I did not divide the money from the sale of the house equally. I gave her only 20% of the proceeds. Fortunately, she did not object, realizing that she had acted meanly. For years have passed since then, and I'm happy that life has turned so dramatically. I am married to the most beautiful and loving woman in the world, who gave birth to a healthy and intelligent son, and this is my happiness. As for Olivia, she's not as fortunate as I am. Half a year after our divorce, she moved in with Jason, who turned out to be not as good a person as she thought. As Olivia told me when she periodically called to complain about her life, Jason was cheating on her without hiding it. He also openly humiliated her in front of friends, saying that she was a bad hostess and terrible in bed. Olivia said that this was how he was taking revenge on her for something, perhaps for not staying with him initially. But I'm not interested. I recently blocked her number because I want to forget everything connected with her, like a nightmare. Story 2. While we were standing in the baggage claim area of the airport, our anticipation grew. Among us was my brother-in-law Greg with his 2 young daughters, 9-year-old Emma and 7-year-old Zoe. Next to me were my own children, 12-year-old Nathan and 9-year-old Lily. The children excitedly held up a large poster with "Welcome Home, Moms" written above their heads. It had been 2 weeks since my wife Samantha and her sister Allison went on a much-needed vacation to the serene slopes of Aspen. Their decision to escape from the harsh Minnesota winter, especially in January, turned out to be a great choice. When the doors signaling the arrival of passengers opened, the children burst into cheers when they saw their beloved mothers. Both women looked fantastic, with a healthy glow and dazzling smiles that melted our hearts as soon as they looked at us. Samantha's affectionate hugs and tender kisses were gladly accepted by Nathan and Lily, who reciprocated with no less enthusiasm. After exchanging pleasantries with the children, Samantha turned to me, and I was rewarded with a sweet kiss. I held her tightly in my arms, not wanting to let go. "I've missed you so much, baby," I whispered. Samantha leaned toward me, her voice soft and intimate. "Just wait until tonight, honey. I'll show you how much I've missed you." And that evening, she certainly fulfilled her promise. We spent a significant part of the night in intimate communication with each other. A few days later, I found Samantha in the bathroom diligently cleaning the tub. I couldn't understand why she felt the need to do it herself because I had already washed it the day before. Sensing my presence, Samantha raised her head and asked, "What are you standing here for?" Feeling awkward, I replied, "Nothing." Instantly, she stood up, took off her protective gloves, and casually threw them into the sink. With purposeful steps, she approached me. In a matter of seconds, I was overcome by a feeling of horror. I couldn't pinpoint exactly what it was, but there was something wrong with Samantha at that moment. There was an unmistakable feeling of unease in the air, although I could hardly identify its cause. After kissing me on the lips, Samantha turned to get her gloves from the sink, mentioning that she needed to finish cleaning the bathroom. And then it dawned on me. In that split second when I caught a glimpse of my own reflection in the clean mirror, all the color disappeared from my face. The realization struck me like lightning. Without saying a word, I turned away and left the room. "I'm going to the garage," I muttered, not paying attention to whether Samantha heard me. Sitting down at the workbench in the garage, I plunged into a whirlwind of thoughts. The disturbing discovery I had just made gnawed at me, leaving an ominous feeling in the pit of my stomach. Deep down, I knew that this discovery was a harbinger of something far from pleasant. Among the stormy thoughts rushing through my head, one question burned brightly. Did Samantha cheat on me during her stay in Aspen? I couldn't help but admit that if she had made the slightest effort, she would have found a suitable partner without much difficulty. All the pieces of the puzzle I observed made sense only if she really had succumbed to temptation while on vacation with her sister. If you think about the possible consequences of such a discovery, the answer was painfully clear. I'd leave her without a second thought. Just thinking about it already caused me deep pain, and I knew that it would only get worse, especially because of our 2 children. How could she betray our family like that? Was I such a terrible husband that she was looking for affection elsewhere? These questions swirled in my head, turning into a chaotic mixture of resentment, confusion, and self-doubt. As the evening wore on, these agonizing questions continued to plague me. Intuition told me that Samantha was unfaithful, but I didn't have any concrete evidence to support this claim. How could I get to the truth if the alleged betrayal occurred thousands of miles away from me in another state? It was useless to confront Samantha directly, since she would most likely deny her guilt. The thought occurred to me, should I turn to her sister? After all, these 2 sisters have always been inseparable, like 2 peas in a pod. If one of them commits treason, it is likely that the other will follow her example. And yet, deep down, I knew that if I turned to Allison with accusations, she would stand up like a wall and stoutly deny everything. Caught in a dead end between the desire to get answers and the fear of a possible breakup of our family, uncertainty gnawed at me, leaving me in a sea of conflicting emotions. The weight of suspicion became heavier and heavier, and I realized that I had to confess my disturbing thoughts to Greg. While I was thinking about this decision, I heard Samantha's voice calling my name and pulling me back to the house. "What have you been doing in the garage all this time?" "What is it?" she asked, expressing concern. "You've been there for more than 2 hours. You'll catch a cold." Trying to brush off her question, I casually replied, "Just cleaning up a bit." But then it dawned on me. I didn't want to sleep in the same bed with her anymore. In addition, I already felt a cold coming on, which had overtaken me on the same day. Fearing the spread of the disease, I suggested sleeping on the couch for a few days so as not to expose her to potential discomfort. Samantha's reaction was obvious. She didn't really like my offer. There was tension in the air, and I sensed a note of discontent coming from her. "Okay, I'll make you some herbal tea before you go to bed. Soothing chamomile should help," Samantha kindly offered. When night fell and Samantha went to bed, I was left alone with my whirling thoughts. My mind raced from one idea to another, struggling with the questions that tormented me. Why did she do it? What steps can I take now? Should I trust Greg to find out if Allison also committed treason? Eventually, amidst the chaos of my thoughts, an epiphany dawned on me. Perhaps there is a way to uncover the truth about Samantha's alleged betrayal. Her addiction to communicating with friends and acquaintances through social networks made it possible. If I had about 150 friends on Facebook, then Samantha had at least 600 or 700 friends. This thought made me curious. Perhaps there are some hints hidden among her vast digital network that could shed light on her actions. It was a potentially difficult task, but the temptation to find answers pushed me forward. Determination grew in me as I considered a new line of investigation. In addition to extensive social media connections, Samantha's email address book contained even more contacts. If she really had an affair during her stay in Aspen, then it's quite plausible that she could exchange emails to maintain contact. But still, there was doubt. Would she risk using her current email account? Because we both know each other's passwords? These thoughts hovered in my head until fatigue overcame me, and I fell asleep. While I was falling asleep, a plan began to form, dictated by the need to get answers. The next day, sleepless nights weighed heavily on me, making it difficult to concentrate on work. Realizing the seriousness of the situation, I scheduled a meeting with a divorce lawyer for the next Friday. Having made up my mind, I asked Greg to meet me for lunch. His surprise was obvious, but he still agreed to meet. It's time to trust him and find out his point of view on Allison's loyalty, hoping that together we can unravel the truth behind our broken marriages. I told Greg about my disturbing discovery, and although he initially reacted to it with laughter, I managed to convince him of the seriousness of the situation. Determined to find out the truth behind our crumbling marriages, he agreed to find out if Allison had been unfaithful as well. Citing a severe form of flu, I left the office earlier than usual and returned home at 3 p.m. Without wasting time, I quietly installed a keyboard tracking program on our home computer. It was a necessary step to gather evidence and find the answers I was so desperately looking for. It took a week of patient waiting before the truth finally came out. One day, while watching the computer work, I noticed that Samantha had logged into another mailbox under the name Snow_Dreams. To my horror, Samantha's password was a combination of the names and ages of her children. When I opened her email inbox, I discovered the disturbing truth. Since her return from Aspen, there had been daily correspondence between Samantha and a man named Eric. Their email exchanges were incriminating for both Samantha and Allison. Shockingly, it turned out that Allison had also entered into a romantic relationship with a man named Tyler. Acting quickly, I forwarded all relevant emails sent and received by Samantha to my own account in order to have concrete evidence of their infidelity. After that, I diligently removed all traces of my surveillance, leaving no trace that I had revealed their secret connection. From my own mailbox, I discreetly shared some letters with Greg, who also had to know the truth about Allison's betrayal. The extent of their illicit relationship became painfully clear. They entered into an intimate relationship almost from the first day of their vacation in Aspen and even repeatedly changed partners throughout the rest of the trip. It was a shocking discovery that pierced my heart with great pain and betrayal. Their daring plans were already in action. They discussed meeting next month in Denver, coming up with a clever trick. The girls had to pretend to go shopping, and Eric and Tyler, pretending to be old friends, were to pretend to go to a Nuggets game. My heart sank when I found this information. As a result of a quick search on Samantha and Allison's Facebook pages, these two newly added friends, Eric Lawson and Tyler Mitchell, were both originally from Colorado and, worryingly, married. The weight of the truth had fallen on me, and I had a difficult task to solve. Greg denied the possibility of Allison cheating, believing that a loving wife would never betray him. I understood his position because it was difficult to accept such a reality. Throughout this stormy journey, Greg stubbornly kept my suspicions a secret, remaining faithful to our friendship. Now I had to find the courage to share the evidence with him, presenting him with the undeniable truth that could destroy his world. Watching Samantha's affectionate and caring behavior towards the children and me, it was hard to accept that she was on the verge of breaking up our marriage. In moments of doubt, I even questioned my suspicions, shaken by her seemingly sincere love. These doubts were reinforced by the need to maintain the appearance of a normal relationship, including the resumption of regular intimacy. Gathering my strength, I dialed Greg's work number, hoping to share the collected evidence with him. "Hi, Greg, this is Mark," I greeted him. "Could you log into your personal mailbox from work?" "Curious," Greg replied. "Of course. You sent me something?" "Yes, it should have come by now. Please read all the emails and call me back," I begged, desperate for him to see the truth hidden in the digital messages. After 30 minutes of agonizing waiting, Greg's furious voice came on the line. "That damn girl," he shouted in anger. "I'll throw her out on the street today. I love this stuff. I would do anything for it." Trying to calm him down, I said, "Calm down, Greg. I have a plan, but we have to be careful. We must not let them know that we are aware of their actions." Greg's reaction was filled with frustration and a desire for immediate retribution. "I can't hold back, Mark. I have to meet her and make her pay," he said decisively. Trying to calm him down somehow, I replied, "We'll do it, Greg. We will get justice, but now we need to gather more evidence and act strategically. Call home and leave a message that you'll be working late today. It is very important to preserve the facade until we have solid evidence. We'll meet at the Old Town Pub, and I'll share my plans with you." In the late afternoon, Greg and I got together to discuss our strategy. "Greg, what could really hurt your wife and mine?" I asked, hoping to divert his thoughts from any form of violence. "Besides a well-deserved kick in the ass," Greg grumbled. Pondering my question, I clarified, "Yes, except for physical violence." Greg was silent, seemingly having no alternative ideas. Disappointment overwhelmed me, but I continued, "Shame. We should shame them, expose their actions in front of their loved ones," I suggested. "You're right," Greg agreed, realizing the effectiveness of such tactics. "Our father-in-law Richard is infinitely devoted to his two girls. This is a well-known fact in our family." There was a glimmer of determination in Greg's eyes, reflecting my own determination. Everything was ready for the implementation of the plan, which eventually had to shed light on the truth and push our unfaithful wives to face the consequences. Then it dawned on me. "And you also know what he despises most in life?" I asked Greg. The familiar smile twitched at the corners of his lips. "Cheating wives," Greg replied, nodding significantly. "Richard, our father-in-law, himself experienced the pain and betrayal of an unfaithful spouse during his own marriage. He discovered that Samantha and Allison's mother had been cheating on him all along. As a result of the divorce process, she received custody of the two daughters, a family home, generous alimony, and even a significant share in Richard's company. In order to buy out her share in the business, he had to accumulate significant debt, which took several years to restore the financial stability of the company. In the end, he made the difficult decision to sell the company. Richard's deep contempt for infidelity and the painful memories associated with it should have been the key to our plan, allowing us to use his emotions to expose the deception of our wives. Despite the pain of the past, Richard managed to build a comfortable life for himself, albeit alone. He treasured visits with his daughters and grandchildren very much, finding comfort in their presence. Realizing this, I explained my plan to Greg in detail. "We need 2 more weeks to maintain the facade of loving husbands," I explained. "Follow my example, Greg. Pretend to have a cold and say that you will often be late at work in the coming weeks. You'll be too sick or exhausted to engage in intimate relationships. For the sake of appearances, we will limit our meetings to once a week, and soon we will be free from their power." That evening, I returned home exceptionally late. Samantha had already gone to bed, which gave me a great opportunity to simulate a severe headache. The charade had begun, and it was very important to play our part convincingly as we set off on the road to liberation. While I was thinking over the complicated details of the revenge plan, fatigue finally overcame me, and I dozed off. Samantha didn't know that I was already aware of her and Allison's plan. When Samantha enthusiastically announced her upcoming shopping trip to Denver, I played along with her, pretending to be enthusiastic about the idea. To show my love and support, I committed myself to booking a hotel room in the city center using our shared credit card. The room was booked under the names Mr. and Mrs. Johnson with double occupancy, implying that Allison and Samantha would share a room. The girls were delighted with this prospect. Greg, showing solidarity, even offered to pay the cost of another room. With each decision taken, the pieces of the puzzle of our revenge gradually fell into place, hiding the true intentions behind the illusion of love and generosity. The room was booked under the pseudonyms Mr. and Mrs. Brown, with the intention that Allison and Samantha would live in the same room. Greg and I organized a deception in such a way that each of the girls believed that we had rented one room separately, although we were well aware that they would not be sharing a room. We wanted them to believe that we did not know about the presence of their lovers in the hotel. The girls carefully planned their vacation, intending to take a day off on Friday, fly to Denver early in the morning, and return on a late Sunday flight. As the pieces of our plan fell into place, I decided to contact Richard, Samantha's father, within the next week. During our conversation, I shared with Richard a plan to arrange a surprise for the girls, a family meeting in Denver in honor of the upcoming 15th anniversary of our wedding. This idea immediately appealed to him, and I asked him to kindly book 3 hotel rooms for us. This was necessary in order to keep the surprise intact. Richard enthusiastically agreed, rejoicing at the opportunity to be part of this grand surprise for his daughters. As the day of departure approached, Greg and I couldn't help feeling disgusted by the girls' behavior. In the morning, when we brought them to the airport, they showed childish excitement, laughed endlessly, and radiated unusual nervous energy. Their behavior was more suitable for 2 schoolgirls going on a first date than for mature adults going on a trip with a supposed shopping intention. Saying goodbye to them at the security gate, Greg and I kissed them on the cheek. It was unpleasant to see that neither of us said the words, "I love you." Silence hung in the air as the reality of their deception did not give us rest. Greg drove us back to the city, and at that moment, I felt a mixture of emotions: anger, disappointment, but also a spark of determination. Taking out my mobile phone, I quickly dialed the number. "Hi, this is Johnson," I said into the phone, referring to the private investigator I hired for this assignment. "They'll be landing in Denver soon. Is everything all right?" Kevin White, the investigator, responded quickly, "Yes, everything is ready. Rooms 2011 and 2003 have been set up with audio and video surveillance. I will have all the necessary evidence by your arrival tomorrow." With renewed vigor, I felt satisfaction from the realization that the truth would soon be revealed. Our plan had been put into action, and the road to rebuilding our lives had begun. The next morning, we all gathered at the airport. When we boarded the plane, Richard kindly swapped seats with my son Nathan, joining me in my row. Sensing our gloomy mood, he leaned towards me and said softly, "Listen, son, Don't just think of me as an old man. I feel that something is wrong. You and Greg look like you're going to a funeral. What's bothering you? Taking a deep breath, I plucked up the courage to tell him the news. I'm sorry I kept you in the dark, Richard. I began, my voice heavy with regret. But I know how much you love your 2 daughters. I'm afraid I'm going to have to share some very hard news with you. They're cheating on both of us. Richard's eyes rested on mine. Shock and sadness were visible in them. He asked directly, "They're cheating on all of us, aren't they?" With a heavy heart, I answered simply, "Yes, they are. With 2 men they met and spent time with during a trip to Aspen." Feeling a mixture of anger and sadness, I continued, "I have instructed a private detective to collect all the evidence that will be needed for the divorce process, and we will hand them a verdict as soon as we find them in bed with their lovers." Richard, showing paternal compassion, put a comforting hand on my shoulder. "I'm truly sorry, son. I understand the pain you're going through. I've experienced something similar myself," he shared, his voice filled with sympathy. "I hoped that the years they lived with me would allow them to gain wisdom. But it seems that the fact that they were raised mainly by their mother during adolescence had an indelible negative impact on them." Tears welled up in Richard's eyes as he allowed himself to mourn the heartbreaking reality of the situation. The weight of disappointment and broken dreams hung in the air when we faced the painful truth together. Tears glistened in Richard's eyes, and he whispered, "I never thought I would be able to endure such pain again," his voice trembling with emotion. Gathering his strength, he returned to his seat, remaining calm. Upon arrival at Denver International Airport, Private Detective Kevin White was waiting for us. He handed me 2 envelopes, one for Greg and one for me. They contained a collection of photographs and a DVD recording of the events of the previous night. Kevin explained that in the near future, a bailiff would contact us, and his team would continue to monitor the 2 bedrooms. He assured us that we would receive information about the most humiliating moments as they unfolded. The reality of the situation fell upon us, and we prepared for the upcoming exposure, every moment filled with trembling expectation and a feeling that justice had finally triumphed. By mid-afternoon, the wives of Lawson and Mitchell should have received a similar package revealing evidence of their infidelity. Feeling the gravity of the situation, Greg and I asked Richard and Kevin to look after the children for a while. We needed time alone to realize the extent of the betrayal of our wives. When we gathered in a secluded place, my heart sank while watching the videos. We cannot divulge the details of what we witnessed, but it was a crushing blow to our spirit. Kevin White called his assistant and asked how things were going at the hotel. To our relief, the lovers were leaving for lunch at that time, which gave us the opportunity to enter unnoticed. Richard checked into 3 rooms, and Greg and I asked for an additional key card for rooms 2011 and 2003, which were already registered in our names. With bated breath, we were preparing for the fact that the truth was waiting for us within the walls of the hotel. After presenting our IDs to the receptionist, we received the corresponding key cards for our rooms. To preserve the element of surprise, we informed the receptionist that our children had come up with a special surprise and asked them not to inform our wives about our arrival. Together, we went up to the 3rd floor where our rooms were waiting for us. An hour passed in anxious anticipation until the phone call from Kevin White rang. "They have returned from lunch and are now in their rooms," he told us. "They even switched partners. Samantha is with Mitchell now, and Allison is with Lawson." Kevin continued, "I'm in the lobby right now, and the bailiff has just arrived. I'll send him to your room soon. If my observations are correct, it's all right." "All right," I announced, putting down my mobile phone and getting out of bed. Having tuned into a cheerful tone for the sake of the children, I said, "It's time to go, guys. Remember what I told you. Grandpa and I will enter the room first. When I give the signal, shout surprise, Mom." "Understand." "Got it, Dad," Nathan replied confidently, demonstrating his understanding that I stressed. "And in no case enter the room until I tell you." "Yes, we get it, Dad," Lily added decisively. We headed for the stairs, preferring to act inconspicuously. Finally, we stopped in front of room 2011. giving ourselves time to gather our thoughts before proceeding to the crucial moment that would reveal the truth. Carefully inserting the key card, I silently turned the handle, and the door slowly opened. Richard and I entered the room, followed by two impatient children, but they couldn't contain their delight and immediately shouted, "Surprise, Mom! We've arrived." Caught off guard, Samantha and Mitchell were lying in bed, and their intimacy was interrupted by our unexpected appearance. Mitchell frantically reached for the clothes scattered on the floor, hurriedly dressed, and hastily left the room. Meanwhile, Samantha began to gather up her clothes. Shock and panic reflected on her face. Samantha screamed, "No, this can't be. What are you doing here?" Ignoring the seriousness of the situation, Lily spoke up. "Hey, Mom, where's your dress?" Her innocent question broke through the tension in the room, crystallizing the reality of the moment. The bailiff snapped his fingers and entered the room. Lily pointed at Samantha, proudly stating, "This is my mom." The server handed Samantha an envelope, notifying her, "You are being served." Without another word, he quickly left the room. Feeling the need for privacy, I turned to the children and gently suggested, "Come on, kids, let's give Mom some time to get dressed." We left the room, leaving Samantha on the floor, bursting into tears, the weight of the envelope clutched in her hand undoubtedly betraying its terrible contents. Greg and his children were standing in the hall away from us, watching the unfolding events. Turning to Greg, I said, "Greg, it's your turn now. You have to deal with Allison." We both understood that things might not go so smoothly with Allison, given Mitchell's more aggressive nature. Taking a deep breath, we prepared for the difficult road ahead, knowing that the next steps would be difficult both emotionally and practically. When he suddenly appeared, Lawson violently attacked the uninvited guests. He attacked Richard, hitting him in the face. Greg didn't need any additional provocations to defend his pent-up irritation. Greg reacted quickly, mirroring Lawson's actions towards Richard. Feeling the growing tension, I quickly entered the room to protect the children from further confrontation. I grabbed Lawson tightly and forced him into the bathroom, away from the children. Urgently throwing clothes after him, I sternly ordered, "Get dressed and leave immediately." At this time, Richard, Greg, and the children left the room, a mixture of shock and horror reflected on their faces. Allison, feeling no shame, left the room throwing a blanket over herself, not paying attention to the consequences of her act. Her father, Richard, looked at her with a deadpan expression that expressed deep disappointment and condemnation. "Go back to your room and get dressed," I ordered firmly. Allison, demonstrating her inner immaturity, obediently turned around and headed for the bedroom. When she entered the bedroom, a bailiff was waiting for her at the door. "Allison Mitchell," he addressed her, handing her an envelope. "You are being served." With that done, we all went back upstairs. According to the original plan, we were supposed to spend the night there to finally talk to our wives. But because of the emotional shock, it was impossible for me to be in the same room with Samantha anymore. Picking up the overnight bag, I informed the children that we were going home. Richard expressed a desire to stay, wanting to get more time to sort out the situation. We respected his choice, realizing that each of us needs to find our own way in this difficult journey associated with heartache and healing. Richard had a lot of questions that he had to solve with his daughters. Greg and his children accompanied us on the way back to Minneapolis. For months later, despite Samantha's insistent pleas for forgiveness, our case was heard in court. The judge presiding over the trial granted the divorce petition without objection. It took Richard a lot of effort to convince Samantha to sign the divorce papers. The house rightfully belonged to me as it was inherited from my parents even before I met Samantha. In addition, I was granted primary custody of the children, but I decided not to demand or receive any alimony from Samantha. Richard had to provide good care for the children and ease their financial burden. Despite the fact that our paths diverged, we still sought to ensure the well-being and happiness of our children. After this difficult journey, we began the process of rebuilding our lives with the hope of a bright future. The remaining property was divided equally, ensuring a fair distribution. The following Christmas, Richard generously gave me a sum of money to help me restore financial stability. He explained that the money would come from Samantha's future inheritance, and I was comforted by the realization that it rightfully belonged to me. Greg's divorce followed a similar scenario, although an additional difficulty was caused by their jointly acquired house. Despite this, Greg and Allison resumed their relationship shortly after the divorce, although the future of their relationship remained uncertain. It was obvious that they were exploring the possibility of reconciliation. As for me and Samantha, there was no chance of reconciliation. Although I believed in remorse, I understood that the trust was irretrievably destroyed. The pain caused by her act was too deep to overcome and left no chance for a second chance. Forgiveness may have played a role in the process of my recovery, but it was not the same as the desire to restore our broken relationship. I am determined to move forward, striving to rebuild my life and find happiness beyond the scars of the past. While I admit that she may still have feelings for me, the harsh truth is that her betrayal destroyed my love for her. It was buried in the remnants of her infidelity on the slopes of Aspen, with no hope of rebirth. The depth of her betrayal did not allow me to love her again. For the sake of our children, we maintained civil relations, but that's all I can offer. There's no room in my heart for anything more. One day, when she was waiting for the children to gather with her, she asked curiously, "I wonder, Mark, how did you find out about what happened in Aspen?" With coldness in my tone, I replied, "It's about tan lines." Puzzled, she replied, "I don't understand. I was in snow gear all the time." At that moment, the gravity of her deception became apparent, and the truth crashed down on her like an avalanche on the slopes. "Samantha, think about it," I urged. "What do you do every time you clean the bathroom? You pack everything you need, put on rubber gloves, and roll up your sleeves." Confused, Samantha replied, "Yes, that's exactly what I do." "What are you getting at?" I continued. "You forgot about one important step. You take off your wedding and engagement rings. You've never had a tan line on your finger." The realization of this fact threw Samantha into shock. Silent and dazed, she gathered her thoughts and quickly left with the children. The weight of the truth hung in the air, foreshadowing a sobering end to our relationship. 5 months later, when Allison's sister donated blood, she was found to have HIV, which caused Samantha to panic. She went to the clinic to be checked too, and of course, it turned out that she was also HIV positive. Then the nurses realized who had infected them with this infection and were furious. Unfortunately, Greg also got infected from Allison and was furious, which led to a violent quarrel with Allison. After that, Allison ended up in the clinic with a broken arm. Well, I'm glad that I didn't follow Greg's example and didn't reconcile with my cheating ex-wife.